Hey guys, it's Cugsley and welcome back to another video. So this is going to be part 2 of my dreams tutorials for logic, and this time I'm doing the door. And the reason being, let's actually just reset the scene there, is because recently, with a lot of creations involving SCP stuff, let me show you what I mean here. A lot of my creations have been being used, and I find that really cool, but one thing I have a problem with that I noticed, and it's not a problem with people, as it is a problem with my creation. So if we search SCP here, when we go in, let's just do this one, I don't know, actually let's do newest, and SCP mini, I think, no, it's this one, and do this, alright? So in here, right, they primarily use, let's turn that volume down. So they primarily use my creations, right? And that's cool, but the problem is that when they use my creations, if they have my doors here, they don't work. But then you go over here, let me try finding one, you see these doors. And so the problem is it doesn't fit, right? And the reason they use these doors is because mine work, but not really. And so they use these doors that work by default for any basic character model. And realizing that, I decided that I need to change my doors a little bit to make it to where it's more compatible, because when you, let's just say we remix this, or actually better yet, let's use a different scene that does this to a greater extent, which would be right somewhere, it would be somewhere, here it is. So looking at this, what you end up seeing when it loads at any point in time, there we go. So what you end up seeing, right, is like they use my stuff and they put in these huge ass doors and like thicken it up and basically try to make it work, and it doesn't, right, because it's not meant to work with this. These hallways are based at, so fun fact, before I made the hallway, I made the door. So the hallways are actually based off of the door's shape, not the other way around. And so as a result, you end up with this, right? So I thought to myself that this would be a good opportunity to fix my door and to give you guys a logic tutorial on how my door works, right? And what you guys can kind of gain from this and do. So with that, here we go. This is the door, and it's actually pretty simple on the outside in that there's only 2 microchips, sensor on this side and sensor on this side. This one's a bit more complicated as it holds all the other logic. So what we have here is all the door logic. So over here, and we're going to name that while we're at it too, is the keycard door. Perfect, let's just, like the keycard logic. So in here, right, you basically have all these sensors, and you have these counters. So these counters are basically, they determine, well, what keycard level door do you need, right? Let's say you want a level 3. So it's going to change this to a keycard door. As you see, the red button's gone, it's actually behind it now. And what it's going to do is, now that this is on, it's going to go down here into this AND gate, because that corresponds to keycard level 3. And now it's going to look for, is keycard level 3 active? Does the player have keycard 3? And if they do, then it's, and the reason I'm only mentioning keycard 3 is because they're all the same for the other ones. So if it does, right, the AND gate turns on, and it goes into this node here, which just combines all those outputs, to keep it simple, and it goes into this OR gate. Now what the OR gate does is it determines, well, can the door be opened in this sense. So one way it can be opened is if you have the right keycard, or if you have a keycard that's higher than the required one, right? That's one way. Or is it not a keycard door? If it's not a keycard door, then this isn't needed, and let it be on. Hence why there's a NOT gate there that connects to this node, which looks for these. Or do they have an Omni keycard, which is basically like the highest level you can get. If you have the highest level, nothing's locked to you, so you can, open any door. So that's basically it, that's literally it, and then this keyframe here is just what changes that red button in and out. So yeah, now out of that, you see all these. And what those actually correspond to are these counters here. So basically what happens is we're doing keycard 3, so that would be this one here. So what this AND gate looks for is, well, is it going to tell you that you need a level 3 keycard? So it's testing, well, do they actually have it? So first, what keycard do they need? 3. So activate this AND gate part here, right? Then it has this NOT gate here, which goes into this OR gate. So, do they have the required stuff? are they able to open the door? If not, then that's a second one. So now there's 2 active here where there's only 1 active here for the others because of the fact that the required key card isn't here. Then do they press X, or do they try to open the door in this sense? If yes, then well, this AND gate will activate fully. We'll timer here, which will send a pulse as we previously mentioned in the eye blinking tutorial, and then it'll send this little signal here saying, all right, they need a key card, and there's a prompt inside the character that will tell you, oh, you need a level 3 key card to pass. So don't worry about that too much. Now, the sniffles, allergies. Sorry about that, guys. So now, here's where it gets into the more door stuff. And this is going to be a pretty short video compared to the rest because there's not much here. So we have to open this microchip. And what you see here are 2 sensors. And this one here at the bottom, I added in this recently. So nothing up here changed, but a lot of stuff down here did. So what we have is we have the standard sensor, which is press X. If the character presses X, inside this kind of zone here, or vice versa for this one, right? What will happen is it'll activate and it'll try to open the door, and if it can't open, it will open, right? But recently, the way this works is you have to have this built into the character. So I will mention this in my possibly a later one, or I'll kind of rehash it. But what we have here, when I open up the character, and I'm opening them up inside of the door, so that's going to be weird. But when you have this character, my character specifically, inside his microchip and inside his control logic, he has this here, which says, well, what button is he pressing? And whatever button he presses, send a pulse and send a signal saying he pressed it. And this is a pretty overly convoluted way of doing it, as I've kind of learned through other people's creations. I did not know you could do this in the game until I looked at the other door, and I realized kind of how they did it, and I thought it was really interesting. So, and it's very efficient too in that sense. Problem is, it just physically doesn't fit with it, so I thought, change with the times, right? So instead of like having the person have to add in a pulse and then add in a transmitter saying to this and then name it, press X, instead of all that, I learned that I can get a trigger zone, the exact same shape as the as this. I made sure of that. And apparently what you can do is you can do possessible controller sensors. Now, I didn't look at the door to see exactly how they did it, so I was like fumbling around for 30 minutes straight trying to like first try out possessed controller sensors, and it got really weird. But weird in that I mean that it didn't work at all whatsoever. It was a complete failure. But I figured it out. If you do a possessed controller sensor, don't even bother naming it, right? And you just make the zone the proper shape you want, it will sense your character. But make sure that that this over here is non-possessible. In fact, it's remote controlled. We'll get to that shortly. So now you have a new sensor, right? And it senses the player when he walks in that zone. Doesn't matter what you have on the player or what you don't have on it, it will sense the player as long as it's controllable. So now you have all those inputs, right? You have first the transmitters, or the receivers, right? Going into that OR gate. Then you have this receiver there as well, and basically in here, this is the required stuff. All that stuff is the parameters, goes into this OR gate. They basically mean the same thing. So in here though, what's actually happening is you have the other receiver on the other side, right? And they go into an OR gate. Now this OR gate's like, all right, well, they're in the area, so part of the AND gate's on. Now they need to press X. So instead, what you do is you get a controller sensor, and you go over to Important Properties, and you select this, Remote Controllable. And what that means is that now it'll look for your input, even if you're not controlling it, it'll just sense for that kind of input. So then you go over here, and you just select the input that you want to look for, which is the cross button. That's a stupid name, I call it X, but alright. And you just wire that to the AND gate. So now, if they're in the area, and if it senses they press X, then it will activate this OR gate, same as this, and do the door logic, which we'll get into. Now you're wondering what this is here, and this is just a kind of a note for anyone who's using this. Basically just saying, right there on the screen, delete this chip to use custom controls, or edit this chip to change button requirements. So I'm just letting them know that they can delete this chip and it'll work fine, but they have to add in their own custom controls then. Or they can just change things around and make this square or make it whatever, right? So that's that. Now we're going to go, and don't worry, I'm not sick, just allergies. So now we're going to go into door open / close logic. And this looks like it's kind of complicated, but it's not too bad. So we're going to start off with just left to right as per usual, just go along with it, chronologically. Wow. So what we have here is, alright, they sent in the input and it's supposedly valid. We'll find that out actually with this wire here. So it's supposed to be valid, and they send it in, it goes into this AND gate. Now if it actually is valid, this wire will be on, because as we talked about previously, if that OR gate's on, that means they can open the door. So now there's 2 out of the 4 on. So what's the rest? Well, you have this here, which is the door input delay. So basically what this does is it stops you from spamming the door constantly. So if you constantly press X, like X, it's not just going to shake back and forth. It has to fully close, then you can open it. Fully open, then you can close it. That way there's a delay, right? And the reason I added that in there is so it adds a little bit more risk to the game. If 173 is there, you can't just close the door instantaneously. It has to open first. And that's all it does. And how it does it, for those of you who want to know, what it does is basically, let's say all this input is valid, and actually there's a loop here, this NOT gate then goes back into this AND gate here. So it's kind of weird, because this AND gate feeds into that, it's a loop, right? So it's like this, but slower and more methodical. So let's say that all the requirements are met, and by default, right, that AND gate's on. The NOT gate is on because the door is done doing its movements. So when they open the door, this counter will go on. What's going to happen is that timer will start, which will essentially stop it from being used again, because it will go right into this counter here. Hold on a moment. I'm trying to think. Alright, sorry. No. This NOT gate's what happens, because that counter got confuddled there. So this timer is basically what we've mentioned before, where it's like a more complex version of just making a loop. It has a delay, so this timer resets this. And this NOT gate is, like as we mentioned previously, it goes into this AND gate, and that's what stops it. So when that's on, NOT gate's off, you can't activate it until it resets, and it's on again. And what this over here does is, so weirdly enough, I tried making it work without this, but if I delete that, that timer is going to start, and like once it finishes, it will stay finished, as in that, right? So this here is basically just to constantly reset it, because otherwise it won't reset on its own. And so it's like it's just that's exactly what it does. This isn't exactly necessary, and of course it turns off when this counter turns on, because that needs to turn on, it needs to continue, right? So that's what it does. That's it. It's just a refresh rate, little thing here, and it just determines, well, wait until it's finished before we let it do it again. So now we have those. So what's this do? This is actually kind of, that's what I'm looking for. It is a residue, I guess, of the previous logic. It's not completely necessary, considering it doesn't really do much. It used to work, but I think something happened, because as you can see there's a 1-second timer, then there's a signal manipulator, which I tried adding in to change it, but it didn't work. And you have the NOT gate, which goes into there. Honestly, you could probably get along fine without this, but because I don't feel like spending too much time figuring out does it work for sure, we're going to keep it there. But there's a phone, don't mind the phone. But it should work without this, I'm saying. So now we have this AND gate, because this microchip does the exact same thing that this was supposed to do. I just forgot to delete this. So now, let's say that the AND gate works and everything follows through, which means all the parameters are met. Now we're going to go down into this final bit here, which is just opening the door and selecting is open or close, which is the selector. So first you have this timer which goes down, and basically all that does is just send that little pulse there, making this switch, and then adding in that noise. So if we turn up the volume, what you'll hear is this. Well, actually first, let's get rid of that. I'll explain what that is very shortly. So hear the door close and all that stuff, and that's based on this timer here, right? Now what this does is this basically causes a small delay between when this, because all the doors start off in open state, and really quickly because of the fact that this wants to finish first, it wants to go down, ends up doing that, right? And to avoid that, I just added this here, added an AND gate, so really quickly that timer has to finish before this can actually have an effect on the sound here. which basically makes it so that way it's silent on the first movement. After that, you hear it. And because all doors do a movement instantaneously when the level starts, it's when you first open the door, it will technically be a second movement, and so you'll hear it, right? That's just a little thing. In fact, actually, if I'm correct, all I gotta do is just move that down. And nope, it still wants to do it. But either way though, that's it. So now what we have is this selector. And all the selector does is actually, if you look here, you can kind of see that those keyframes. It just selects the keyframes on or off. If they're on, and they open. If they're off, and they close. Yep. So now, what we have here are these two things. Now, I mentioned this in the 173 thing, and now you get to see it. It's the door opening. And what this does is it sends a signal saying door's opening, and it stops 173 from moving while the door's opening. That way it doesn't rush through at this first chance it gets. To a degree it works. There's a few things you need to change, mainly with line of sight and making it to where it still knows that the player can see it, even though it thinks it can't. Just a few, basically, I guess raycasting would be the correct term in that sense. Just line of sight fixes, right? So that's what that does, and we already established that that goes on this. So that seems to be the entire microchip. Yeah, that's it. So now, with these changes, specifically with this blue microchip and the small addition here, just with adding in, I guess, this to make it a little smoother, the door's finished, and it's compatible with basically anything you want to... Oh, let's do that. Yeah, there we go. So now, let's say I pull in my D-class character. Right? It still works. So if I set them down right there, and... no, don't fall. You're good. No, don't. Take your time. Okay, there we go. So now, I didn't fall down. Alright, so now you can... Shit, I forgot to change it back to... Okay, hold on. Sorry. Now, if I change this back to a regular door and, get rid of the key card requirement, then what will happen, sorry about that guys, is it will open, right? Same as usual, it works with my D-class character. And if you spam it, it only opens when it's finished. So there you go. Now, watch this. I can get rid of it, and I can grab myself, let's do a basic puppet, the lowest of the low, right? And I place it right there, and it doesn't fall. Good, it actually didn't fall. I can still open the door. Of course, now it's annoying because I'm jumping, and the door is making a noise. It's just that because it's third person, it's kind of far away, and so you can't hear it quite as much. So that's it with the video. That's oh wait, let me get the character out here. That's how my door works, and right in front of you guys, I will publish. I don't actually need to save it, but I will. Why not? So what I will do, and God, I hate the water flowing. When that goes away, I will publish this, right? I'll update it, and in here I will put added default functioning. So yeah, let's do that. Or function ing. So there you go. So now this door is again public. It will be updated on my SCP Creators Kit, so all of you guys can use it for your creations. So let me just do that now. And there you go. So that should fix the problem with my doors not being compatible. Of course, I still need to change all the doors in my actual level to go along with it. Like, there are so many rooms that have doors included with them, and there are so many doors in general that it's going to be a lot. But that's it for the video. So now you guys have full access to the doors and their functions. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned a thing or two about this, because that'd be really cool. And maybe you guys can use this logic or this, I guess, type of thinking that way, perhaps, for your own creations. So yeah, see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.